According to the world, apartheid was heaven on earth for the white population and hell for the black people. I was born and grew up during the so-called apartheid era. I want to share my experience of the so-called apartheid era. 1979, grade 1. We lived and farmed on a farm 70 kilos northeast of Pretoria. It was a family farm that worked generations part of our family. Tweefontein, 5,500 hectares of the most beautiful farmland in the area. My dad was busy building a cattle farm and had a herd of close to 400 Simmentaler cattle. We also had 30 Jersey cows and a bull for milk. My dream was to farm with sheep. We had ample water and resources on the farm. About 100 hectares under irrigation from a huge earth dam. 1980, we had to evacuate the farm with a brand new 3-bedroom homestead. The so-called apartheid government decided they need the land to develop a homeland for the black people. It was when they developed KwaMashlanga. After winning court cases against the government, they made backdated laws to win the next court case. It was a losing battle. They paid my dad almost nothing for the farm. We weren't even able to buy a house in town with the money we received. All our dreams were scattered. The end of our beloved farm and the end of a legacy. They gave and developed KwaMashlanga at the cost of the farmers in the area. Built industrial areas like Ekandustria for the black people to develop their skills. What happened to that area? They never developed anything meaningful. They built informal settlements and worked in the former white areas, while business people tried to develop the industrial area with no success because of trouble with the local black population. Ekandustria is almost a ghost town today. Our school, Hartbeesspruit Primary, was a farm school close to our farm. I only had memories of love from that school. From watermelon fights in the dam to movies in the school hall. Today, it's heartbreaking to see what happened to our beloved school. It's all ruins and hardship. Even after all these years, we still have contact and share memories on a Facebook group. Some very interesting facts no one talks about. The real story of apartheid, not told by the South African Rainbow government. According to some, there's an ugly reality that we can't just sweep under the rug. That apartheid benefited white South Africans at the cost of all others. Now let's see who benefited from apartheid. In an article called The Afrikaner, 11 February 1987, the quarterly magazine called Vox Africana number 29 of 4-87 stated that South Africa had 4.8 million whites and 18.2 million blacks in 1987. The whites paid 77% of the taxes and the blacks only 15%. Despite this, 56% of the government budget was spent on blacks. Today it's often quoted that per capita government spending on black education slipped to the 1/10 of spending on whites in the 1970s. What everyone failed to say is that since 1970, the budget for black education was raised by about 30% per year every year, more than any other government department. In the period 1955 to 1984, the amount of black school students increased 31 times, from 35,000 to over 1 million. 65% of black South African children were at school, compared to Egypt's 64%, Nigeria's 57%, Ghana's 52%, Tanzania's 50%, and Ethiopia's 29%. Amongst the adults in South Africa, 71% could read and write, 80% between the ages of 12 and 22. Compare this to Kenya, 47%, Egypt, 38%, Nigeria, 34%, and Mozambique at 26%. In South Africa, the whites built 15 new classrooms for blacks every working day. Every day. At 40 children per class, it means space for an additional 600 black students every day. In 1985, there were 42,000 blacks at 5 universities in South Africa, about the same amount at the universities in the homelands. Another example of Bantu education is the unique medical university of Medunsa that I mentioned in part 5 of this series. Here, the whites trained black medical doctors, dentists, veterinarian surgeons, and paramedical personnel to world-class standards at full state cost. About 200 black medical doctors were qualified here every year, thanks to the oppressive Bantu education system. In my search to find the true reason for the 1976 Soweto school riots, I found that most sources say that the riots was because of Afrikaans being forced to be taken as the medium of instruction. Why the vilification of Afrikaans? The truth is that if one looks at the original decree, one will see that both Afrikaans and English would be used on a 50-50 basis. Once again, we see how Afrikaans has been vivid over the years. I can still understand to a degree why the blacks would object to Afrikaans or English. But what I cannot understand is why the coloureds of Cape Town who only spoke Afrikaans or English would also boycott and riot. During the time of Dr. Verwoerd, the living standards of blacks were rising at 5.4% per year, against that of the whites at 3.9% per year. In 1965, the economic growth of South Africa was at the second highest in the world at 7.9%. The rate of inflation was a mere 2% per annum, and the prime interest rate only 3% per annum. Domestic savings were so great that South Africa needed no foreign loans for normal economic expansion. Even Lord Didas admitted white South Africa grew to become an economic giant of the continent. The other members of the Commonwealth virtually sank into poverty. At the height of apartheid in 1978, Soweto had 115 football fields, 3 rugby fields, 4 athletic tracks, 11 cricket fields, 2 golf courses, 47 tennis courts, 7 swimming pools built to Olympic standards, 5 bowling alleys, 81 netball fields, 39 children play parks, and countless civic halls, movie houses, and clubhouses. In addition to this, Soweto had 300 churches, 365 schools, 2 technical colleges, 8 clinics, 63 daycare centers, 11 post offices, and its own fruit and vegetable market. There were 2,300 registered companies that belonged to black businessmen, about 1,000 private taxi companies. 3% of the 50,000 vehicles owners in 1978 were Mercedes-Benz owners. Soweto alone had more cars, taxis, schools, churches, and sport facilities than most independent countries in Africa. The blacks of South Africa had more private vehicles than the entire white population of the USSR at that time. Today, Soweto has modern shopping malls like Dobsonville Shopping Centre. In 2005, the Protea Gardens Mall opened. This was followed by the Barra Mall Shopping Centre and the Jabulani Shopping Complex and the Mapoyani Mall. Experts says that Soweto has as much as 25% oversupply of retail space. The biggest hospital in the world, Baragwanath, with 3,200 beds, and at its peak during apartheid with almost 8,000 staff, had 23 operation theatres fitted out with the most modern medical equipment that existed in the world. Blacks were treated here, operated on, at full state cost to the white taxpayers for unlimited periods. The budget of the hospital was and is higher than the yearly budget of most member states of the United Nations. Next door to Baragwanath is the St. John's Eye Clinic. The clinic was world famous for the treatment of glaucoma, cataracts, traumatic eye injuries, and rare tropical diseases. Now that's apartheid for you.